Day after day, we are surrounded by the presence of criminals. We are spectators to the deepest darkness in human actions and the bizarre reality that someone's suffering can be a form of pleasure. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Luke, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The Jamison Family Case. Bobby Jamison and Sherilyn Jamison, despite some eccentricities, were a rather ordinary couple. They preferred to keep a distance from commitments and other socialization demands. The couple met in the summer of 2002 and quickly fell in love, marrying soon after. Sherilyn had a son, Colton, from a previous marriage, who got along well with Bobby. In 2004, their family expanded with the birth of their daughter, Madison Jamison. The Jamisons lived in Eufaula, Oklahoma, where Colton had spent part of his childhood. However, in July 2009, Colton was sent to live with his father for unknown reasons. Life wasn't always easy for the Jamisons. Sherilyn had battled depression since her sister's death in a bizarre accident involving a bee sting on her tongue. She was also diagnosed with bipolar disorder and sometimes neglected her medication. Bobby faced his own challenges after a car accident, left him with chronic debilitating back pain, preventing him from working. The constant pain and financial worries contributed to his depression as well. Their mental health issues began affecting their marriage, leading to arguments and discussions about possible divorce. The Jamisons were a reclusive family, often keeping their personal matters hidden from even those closest to them. Bobby and Sherilyn were deeply religious and engaged in spiritual practices, but they also harbored intense paranoia about spirits invading their home. They sought guidance from a preacher, sharing their fears with him. Sherilyn was particularly concerned about spirits communicating with their daughter, Madison, who talked to an imaginary friend named Emily. This behavior was likely Madison's way of coping with the family's chaotic environment. Bobby, worried about spirits on their roof, inquired about special bullets to eliminate them. He also possessed a satanic Bible, intending to use it for exorcising spirits from their home. The Jamisons owned a storage container on their Eufaula property, intending to use it as temporary housing while building their new home on a mountain. The container attracted attention from neighbors due to the unusual graffiti Sherilyn, who claimed to be a witch, sprayed on it. She believed her black cats were being poisoned and accused neighbors of the act, causing discomfort and leading them to avoid the Jamisons. Sherilyn's desire for solitude ultimately aligned with the neighbors' inclination to keep their distance. Feeling uncomfortable in their neighborhood and seeking a fresh start to possibly save their marriage, the Jamisons showed interest in a remote piece of land near Red Oak, about 30 miles from their home. On October 7, 2009, the family set out in their truck to see the land but got lost and stopped to ask for directions. Deciding to return home, they ventured back to the mountains the next day. The Jamisons, being a private family, often went weeks without contact with friends or relatives, so it wasn't unusual for them to be out of touch for over a week. On top of this, the family had informed Madison's school that they would be withdrawing her as they were moving away, hence why the school never asked after her. 8 days after anyone had last seen or heard from the Jamisons on the 8th, hunters reported an abandoned truck on the top of Panola Mountain and reported it to police, who determined that it belonged to the Jamisons. The truck was locked, and it appeared that all of the family's possessions, including their dog Maisie, were inside. Maisie was miraculously still alive, but extremely malnourished, having not eaten for a number of days. Authorities freed Maisie from the truck, bringing her to live with Bobby's mother. When authorities began investigating the mysterious disappearance of the Jamison family, they learned that on October 8, 2009, 44-year-old Bobby, 40-year-old Sherilyn, and their 6-year-old daughter, Madison, were last seen by a man living in the mountains of southeastern Oklahoma. This sole witness informed the authorities that he saw only the family and no one else in the area during that time. At the time, the county sheriff told the press that the witness was a landowner in the Red Oak area and that they had searched the area but found no clues. Officially, the Jamisons were near this area to view a 16-hectare plot they intended to buy. Strangely, they planned to live on this land in a storage container they already owned on their property in Eufaula. Police discovered several personal belongings in the truck, including cell phones, Sherilyn's purse, and Bobby's wallet in the family's truck. Believing the family might be lost in the dense and treacherous woodlands of Panola Mountain, authorities utilized the GPS data from Bobby and Sherilyn's cell phones to trace their movements. The GPS trail led them up a hill where they found small footprints, presumably belonging to Madison. At the hill's summit, a photo of Madison was discovered on the cell phone belonging to Bobby. The picture sparked varied interpretations of her emotional state. Some observers suggested she looked on the verge of laughter, while others perceived her as close to tears. A theory emerged that someone other than her parents might have taken the photo, given her lack of smile and seemingly uncomfortable body language. However, the photo's significance as evidence is debatable, as discerning Madison's thoughts or feelings from the image is challenging. It's argued that a 6-year-old would likely not hide fear or threat, so if she felt intimidated by the photographer, her expression would probably clearly reflect fear, which is not evident in the photo. Authorities estimated that the family spent approximately 15 minutes at the mountain's peak before returning to their truck. This moment marks the beginning of the mystery, as their subsequent actions and whereabouts remain unknown. The following day, a large-scale search operation was launched, involving over 100 law enforcement personnel, volunteers, search dogs, and helicopters, but the family was not found. Further investigation of the truck revealed several intriguing clues. Hidden under the front seat was a bag containing $32,000 in cash. Additionally, an 11-page letter written by Sherilyn, filled with hostility and hatred towards Bobby, was discovered. The letter conveyed Sherilyn's feelings of neglect and indifference from Bobby towards his family. She criticized him for being a recluse and for not valuing his family, highlighting the strained dynamics within the household. Parallel to the on-site investigation, police followed essential steps in any missing persons investigation. They spoke with the couple's family and close circles, where they learned that the Jamisons had some peculiar traits. Friends reported that the family had begun acting strangely, and both Bobby and Sherilyn had lost a significant amount of weight before disappearing. The sheriff at the time speculated that the family might have been involved in drugs, although no evidence of this was found. There were also references to the couple's erratic behavior, seen moving objects to the vehicle in a way that seemed robotic or trance-like. Unfortunately, questioning those close to the couple only confirmed their atypical nature, but shed no light on the family's whereabouts. As months and then years passed without further leads, the case remained unsolved. The next discovery related to the case occurred in 2013, again reported by hunters. This finding would at least partially resolve the mystery of the Jamison family's disappearance. The hunters found the remains of 3 bodies, belonging to 2 adults and a child. The discovery of the remains occurred near where the Jamisons' vehicle was found in 2009, leading many to believe they belonged to the missing family. However, confirmation was needed. At the time, the sheriff was asked by journalists why the bodies were not found in 2009, despite the intensive search and the use of tracking dogs. She speculated that the bodies might have been covered by falling leaves, which could have caused rescuers to overlook them. Bobby's paternal uncle was the first family member to speak with the media. He explained that while it wasn't definitive that the remains were his nephew and his family, all evidence pointed to them. He had been contacted by the FBI about the discovery and said he had no hope that the family was still alive 4 years after their disappearance. For him, finding the bodies provided closure, although it was sad because the reasons for their fate were unknown. He found it particularly painful that an innocent child had met such an undeserved end. Meanwhile, authorities warned that the process of identifying the bodies would take time. The county sheriff's office, the Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and the state medical examiner's office searched the area, but found no evidence to help identify the remains, as they reported in a joint statement. A spokesperson for the medical examiner's office said they received the skeletal remains of 2 adults and a child, and announced they would use pathological, anthropological, and forensic methods to determine if the remains belonged to the Jamison family. She clarified that identification could take days or even years, depending on the condition and preservation of the remains. Many months later, on July 3, 2014, it was confirmed that the remains belonged to the Jamison family. The forensic analysis of the bodies revealed no soft tissues, only partial skeletal remains due to significant scavenger and rodent activity at the site. Despite this, the bodies appeared to have been placed side by side and face down. Skulls were present, and although a small hole was found in Bobby's skull, possibly caused by a bullet, the state of decomposition meant the medical examiner could not determine a definitive cause of death. Since the Jamisons' disappearance, 5 theories have been publicized to explain their deaths, but none have been confirmed. The first theory suggests an accident, pointing to weather reports in the area at the time, showing temperatures of around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. In the days following their disappearance, the area experienced heavy rains, but not enough to cause death. The bodies were found only 4 kilometers from their truck, raising the possibility that the family got lost in the woods and died of hypothermia and exposure. However, this doesn't explain why their truck was left as if they intended to return soon. The second theory proposes a scenario of murder followed by a suicide decision. It was known that both Bobby and Sherilyn suffered extreme stress throughout their lives. 11-page-long letter was found in their truck, in which Sherilyn expressed her resentment towards Bobby, accusing him of being a hermit. Another letter found in their family home was said to mention death. Although Sherilyn's mother stated that writing such letters was common for her due to her bipolar condition, Sherilyn's gun was also missing from the car. This raised the question of whether Sherilyn could have walked 4 kilometers with her family to kill them and then take her own life. Police also investigated the theory that the Jamison family's deaths were a murder-suicide, but not by Sherilyn, instead by Bobby. According to this hypothesis, Bobby might have read his wife's resentful letter and decided to end everyone's lives. However, this theory weakens with the evidence, as no weapon was found near the bodies. This does not rule out the possibility of death by poison or other means. It's also unclear why they would have traveled so far from the truck to end their lives, especially since Bobby had mobility issues in his own home due to his injuries. The scenario of him walking 4 kilometers through mountainous terrain seemed improbable. Moreover, this does not explain why they were found lying face down, side by side. The third theory involves Bobby's father, 67-year-old Bob Dean Jamison, as responsible for the murders. It was revealed that in early 2009, about 6 months before the family disappeared, that Bobby had filed for a protective order against his father. He described his father as a dangerous man who thought he was above the law and had connections with prostitutes, gang members, and methamphetamine trafficking. Bobby also claimed that his father had threatened to kill him and his family on 2 separate occasions, once in November 2008 and again in April 2009. Bobby feared for their lives as his father had once hit him with a vehicle. Bobby had been involved in a dispute with his father, which resulted in Bob removing everyone except Madison from his will. The dispute stemmed from disagreements over a supposed deal between them. Bobby claimed he worked at his father's service station for free, under the understanding that he would inherit half of the business. But his father later said that agreement never existed. However, Bob died just 2 months after the Jamisons' disappearance and had been ill for some time. His brother Jack stated that Bob was either in a hospital or a nursing home at the time of the incident, and added that, although Bob was a disturbed person, he was not capable of being involved in the murders. The fourth theory is that the Jamisons were killed by a cult. Sherilyn's mother believed that the Jamisons were murdered by a religious cult in southeastern Oklahoma. According to her, the cult had violent members and had put Sherilyn on a blacklist. However, she never named a specific cult, and no evidence has been found to support this theory. It has also been suggested that the Jamisons practiced witchcraft. Reports indicated that a witch's Bible was found in the family's home. However, Sherilyn's best friend Nikki stated that the supposed satanic book was purchased solely for the purpose of a prank. Yet, Bobby's spiritual advisor mentioned that Bobby had confessed to reading a satanic Bible. This raises several questions about the theory of a cult-related murder. Why were the bodies found deep in the forest, and how did they get there? Were they forced to walk at gunpoint, or were they taken there after being killed? Transporting bodies 4 kilometers through dense forest would be challenging, suggesting the involvement of more than one perpetrator. The fifth theory relates to drug issues. Rumors suggested that Bobby's parents were involved in illicit substance trafficking, and some suspected that the family was involved in a drug deal gone wrong. The Jamisons' aforementioned strange behavior could be explained by drug influence. However, former sheriff stated that there was no evidence to support the theory of drug use or trafficking by the couple. Many have pointed out that Bobby and Sherilyn were good parents and would not have taken Madison with them if they were involved in a drug-related event. The fact that the bodies were found aligned and face down could suggest an execution-style murder. If so, was it premeditated? Who knew they would be in that remote mountain area at that time? And what was the motive? Alternatively, they might have stumbled upon something they shouldn't have seen and were silenced. But again, why were they taken so deep into the forest? For time, when revisiting the case to find closure and a responsible party, a particular detail emerged. The bottle found in the Jamisons' vehicle. It was determined to belong to a former guest at the family's house who had been expelled for being a white supremacist. Sherilyn, who had Native American ancestry, had reportedly expelled him at gunpoint only a month before the disappearance. The dispute arose because the individual, whose identity remains confidential, expressed beliefs that all non-white people needed to die. While he seemed to have a motive for revenge, he provided a solid alibi and was ruled out as a suspect by the FBI. Rumors then circulated that the Jamisons were on the blacklist of a white supremacist group known as the United White Knights. The mountains where they disappeared were known as a hotbed for far-right extremists, and near where the Jamisons' truck was found, a vandalized car was covered with racist slogans. Sherilyn had supposedly been part of the group's missions, but had rewritten the messages with religious words of peace and love. Although white supremacists are active in the area, No concrete evidence has been produced to support their involvement in the case. Ultimately, all the theories remain speculative. To this date, what happened to the Jemisin's on October 8, 2009, remains unknown, and unless someone who knows the truth comes forward, it will continue to be an unresolved mystery with limitless theories but very few answers. And that's the end of today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, like, and share this video, it will help me continue creating content. This was another episode of Unreal True Crime. See you soon.